Hello, Waterford students. It's Mrs. Durst, and today I have Edgar and Alan with me as we talk about Lesson 3D, which is all about the season of autumn. We often call autumn fall. So we've talked about winter, spring, summer, and now fall or autumn. Autumn is my most favorite season of them all, though I love all the seasons, don't get me wrong, but I think fall is my most favorite. I love the colors, I love the cooler temperatures, and I love the thoughtfulness of an ending and looking forward to new beginnings because fall has some of the greatest festivals and holidays, and it's exciting to look forward to things like Christmas and Thanksgiving and Halloween and the start of school. So I think it's a great time to meditate on what great things have happened and are coming to an end, and what wonderful things are yet to come in the year. So for me, I just love autumn. And we're going to look at some gorgeous artwork today by some of the most famous artists out there. And we're going to see how they took the season of fall or autumn and made us feel what they were trying to create for us. Okay, so let's take a look as I share my screen with you. And there we go. Ah, you by now know that this is a Peter Bruegel, and this wonderful, wonderful painting is of late November, maybe early November. The autumnal colors, those oranges and browns and golds, are obviously in the forefront for us. The bare trees tell us that the leaves have already come down. And what's interesting with this 450-year-old painting is that the farmers and the herdsmen are bringing the cattle back to town after feasting all summer on lush grass. They're bringing these cattle home away from those pastures where they could freeze to death during winter. They're trying to bring those cattle home to take good care of them. Now, Alan, I think that's your friend up there in the tree, if I'm looking at it correctly. Aha, very true. You will see birds in the tree because the leaves have come down. So in a lot of these great paintings, you'll see birds peering out at the scenery. We see also in the sky, I believe, some menacing clouds. It's kind of telling me that winter's quite on its way. So while these herdsmen are working very hard, they're getting their cattle home to keep them warm, I can totally feel the cold in the air blowing in from that weather. Even though this painting is 450 years old, it touches me, and I can feel perhaps what these gentlemen on the horses and driving these cattle might have felt. This may be the most famous painting in an autumn setting that we can find. Claude Monet created Autumn Effect, that's the name of the painting, in 1873. This painting was done at the very moment that the Impressionist movement was just roaring in Paris. And he took a break and went to this small town, Artengel, or Artentel. I'm bad with French, but I think I'm getting closer with Argentel. And the reflection on the water is amazing. It is doubling the color in our painting. It is just fantastic. He created that autumn leaf expanse with oranges, pinks, purples, and greens. Now on the right side of his picture, he wasn't very happy with that tree. So there's like some scratch marks in the paint where he did it. He talks about it in some of his letters. He actually scratched out some paint to make them look a little lighter and that sunlight might have been hitting that tree, which I think is kind of funny because, hey, it's his painting. He's Monet. He can scratch off paint if he wants. But I love, love, love the reflection in the water. And let's get up a little closer. And you can just see how vivid his colors are. Oranges, golds, browns, greens still there. So it tells me this is September going into October, but it's just a fascinating painting to me. And probably the most famous autumn painting out there. So here we have, is that you in the sky, Edgar? Those are ravens for sure. That might be you. So this is a painting by Vincent van Gogh, and it's called Tree Number 1, Autumn Landscape. And he painted this painting in 1885. This is right around the time he was really experimenting with that yellow color that he loved. The sense of perspective in this painting is excellent, and that's probably why it is very famous. Other than that, it's a very simple fall painting, but his perspective is excellent. The trees that are closer to me look bigger, and the trees that are far away look smaller. I also absolutely love his sky in this painting. It's not one big, sea of blue. It is a number of colors. I see purple, blue. The clouds have some yellow in them, white. It's a very beautiful, colorful sky that if I'm not really thinking about it, looks like sky. But when I really dive in and look at it up close, I can start to pull apart all these amazing colors. So Vincent van Gogh did this painting of a place in France, and it wasn't his most famous fall painting. I'll show you that one next. The Mulberry Tree in Autumn, painted in 1889. This was painted near the end of his life, so he has already had the big fight with Paul Gauguin, and he has checked himself into a hospital, and this mulberry tree is in the garden at the hospital. So they would allow him to paint all the time at this hospital, and he loved this tree. This may be his most famous painting, his most favorite personal painting. So he wrote about this painting many times to his brother and said it was painted in the most superb autumn day. And he had so much fun painting it. And it was his favorite colors. Look at all that yellow. And for him, this may have been his most favorite painting he ever worked on. The paint on this painting, by the way, is so thick that it almost feels 3D. I mean, he just over and over and over layered these paints on top of each other so that it sticks out from the canvas quite a bit. Paul Gauguin was, of course, the friend of Van Gogh and roommate. And while he was living with Van Gogh, he painted this fall landscape on the lane at Alchamps in 1888. And it's a gorgeous picture. I feel it's a very happy picture with all these bright, vivid oranges and yellows and bright greens. However, if you really look at this painting, it's of ancient graveyard. It's an ancient graveyard. We're looking at the tombs of very, very old soldiers that are here in this grassy area behind a church. So it might even be a little spooky for its time. I feel it might be the first Halloween painting ever. And Paul Gangwin did a beautiful job with those vivid, amazing fall colors. This painting is called Apple Tree 1 by Gustav Klimt, who was an Austrian painter. He was a very famous painter of his time, as well as very involved in politics. He was considered a modernist, and he experimented with paints and shapes and the human form quite a bit. He painted this amazing apple tree in 1912, so quite late in his life. He was about 49, 50 when he finished this work, and he only lived 5 more years after this. So this was in the later period of his life. I think it's fascinating because it is actually fooling us. There are 4 distinct planes in front of us. The flowers are up front. Then you have a field of some sort between the flowers and the tree. And then you have the tree. And then you have something beyond the tree, maybe another part of the field, maybe it's a forest, a house, we're not sure. But Klimt was very good at fooling us with his perspective. And he was great at experimenting with it. And so he has squished 4 planes of space in his picture for us to enjoy, and yet it works. It's not strange. We can kind of identify this as an apple tree in a field with flowers in front. Those flowers are asters that usually flower in September. And of course, we get apples usually in late September. I also think the blue in the tree is quite fabulous. I believe it, even though it's kind of unusual. So he experimented and fooled around with color in that tree. All right. I think you said that was a Currier and Ives. Yes, it is. It is American Homestead in Autumn. We are looking at a really wonderful lithograph, which is kind of like a coloring book, printed in black and white. What Currier and Ives would do would then allow artists who were women who could then paint at night in their homes, and they would colorize these lithographs, which I think are just beautiful. So what we see in this in this picture is a man bringing down all the red apples. It's only the first harvest. We see there are green apples still up in that tree for maybe next week's pick. We also see out in the field that the hay and the wheat are already peaked and put into piles. That hard work has already been done. We see there are pumpkins laying around under these trees, which is a lot of delicious food. And what we can say and feel good about is this little family is going to have great food for the winter. I can imagine that they will make jellies and applesauce and pies and use those apples all through the winter time. So it gives us a feeling of kind of a nice feeling of knowing that our food will be there during the winter is a feeling of security. So this picture would have made people feel very happy in this imagery of the fall. Let's see if you know who did this picture. If you say Charles Wysocki, you are correct. One telltale way to know is there is a flag, an American flag, in that painting. He also created these wonderful landscapes, and we know how well he was able to show light on water. Now here is a storm cloud brewing at probably sunset. That mom is blowing the horn to let her kids know it's time to come home. And this is absolutely a moment in time in autumn because we see the pumpkins are there waiting. And this is called Supper Call. And I love this picture because when I used to boat and fish on Lake Erie, my mother would also blow a horn or ring a bell to let me know to get into shore for dinner. So this is a perfect rendition of what he called it, Supper Call. Take for a minute and look at the light on the pumpkins. I think that is very unique because we see the light is fading in the distance, yet the pumpkins are illuminated. So that tells me that maybe there's a bright moon rising behind the scene. So that is Charles Wysocki's Supper Call. This too is a Charles Wysocki. Now, I love Halloween very much, and I think he did too. I think I see a few of your friends up there in the air. So what we are looking at here is obviously a Halloween scene with some witches in the air. The witches have kind of gone crazy and they're riding their horses around and they're brewing up a big pot of witch's brew in the front yard of this kind of spooky building. I don't think it's terribly spooky, but I think that this whole picture is quite excellent. And why I love it is look at the color of the sky. You wouldn't expect that, but it just gives this painting a bit of flair, doesn't it? This is also a Charles Wysocki. I wanted to share this with you guys because I know you also love Halloween. And I just love the pumpkins and the ghosts. And I think he did a great job bringing in all the ideas behind Halloween in one painting. Really a neat idea by Charles Wysocki. And his last one, probably one of my favorites. Yeah, that looks like your grandma on the front of that broom. I agree. So here's this wicked witch. Maybe she's not too wicked. I think she's just in a rush. And she's going somewhere on Halloween and she's got her pumpkin and she is ready to have a great night with her buddies, the bats, and of course, her pet raven. So I think that is a really neat painting by Charles Wysocki of a wicked witch. And we love the fall because we get to have Halloween and enjoy some of this fun. Here's Ben Richmond's Scarecrow. And he painted this of a field, a wheat field in Ohio. And we see that it's a very simple scarecrow. It doesn't really even have like a typical head. It's just somebody's old hat and an old shirt blowing around with, are those ravens? No, those are not ravens. He says no. In the background. Maybe some friends of yours? Yes, you know these guys. Okay, great. And here's one of my favorite Ben Richmond paintings called Windward Spirits. He painted this old lighthouse that had kind of gone into disrepair. And he brought it back to life in this painting. This is the lighthouse on Green Island in Lake Erie. Today, Green Island is a bird refuge, so no people live on the island. Just birds get to live there all year round and enjoy it. But there used to be a lighthouse back in the olden days. In 1854, they built a lighthouse out there. And now today, that lighthouse looks like that. That's a bird refuge. But the old lighthouse is still kind of there. It's kind of broken up in a pile of rocks. There's no roof. It's definitely kind of spooky looking, if you ask me. But Ben Richmond, in his painting, Windward Spirits, brought it back to life as it might have been many, many years ago. Our last few paintings are interesting because Alan Malley, I could not find a single painting where he depicted autumn. No trees with orange and yellow and red. I thought that was absolutely amazing. I expected to see that he had painted autumn, but he did not. So I found some of these paintings that might kind of go with an autumn theme. Here is a ball where the women are dressed in absolutely beautiful dresses or costumes. The person who draws our attention into this painting is dressed in an amazing yellow gold dress, which is an autumn color. And I just think, even though Alan Malley did not paint autumn scenery, he depicted a moment here that might be considered a ball that might have happened in the autumn. And this final painting today is an Alan Malley, and I chose it because the colors here also remind me of the fall. They're still bright, gorgeous yellows, oranges, reds, but there's a hint of what's coming, the dark, muted colors of winter. So I thought this painting we could talk about color very well. I see yellow, I see reds in the books, and of course I see Alan Malley's wife in her amazing orange dress walking in to greet him. And yet I see the browns and the grays and the blacks of winter coming along. So I think this is a great concept piece for autumn. Yes, I loved it too. Very well. So Edgar, Allen, and I are going to be with you to draw a fall picture. So find your lesson 3 palette picture. This one is the one I've been working on right here. So find that for our next video, as well as your autumn picture in lesson 3. And we'll finish up lesson 3 this week. Thank you so much. I hope you have a lovely afternoon.